Welcome to season 2 of F That, the perspective shift. If season 1 was about saying fuck that to trauma, this season is about asking, what if we've been seeing the world all wrong? Inspired by shows like Revisionist History, we're flipping the script on patriarchy, race, family, habits, and so much more. Because when you see the world differently, you move through it differently. This is where personal evolution meets cultural reckoning. Let's stop performing for the damn man and start thinking about ourselves. Are you ready? Let's get into it. You guys, it has been so long since I recorded a podcast episode. And I have been feeling a little bit unmotivated recently to record because I was so busy creating the Institute of Unlearning, which is all for free on YouTube right now. You can go and check my YouTube channel in order to get access to it. But I was also in this place of trying to decide if I wanted to continue to pour into everyone the way that I have been and talking to you about my programs and talking to you about conversions, or if I just wanted to start to share my life with you. Because over the past few months, I've done a lot of work in recognizing the effect it is that I have on people and the magic that my aura does on people, and allowing people to see the possibilities for their life through me and through me sharing my experiences and my stories. And so I know that season 2 was all supposed to be about how we view things differently, and taking a page out of Malcolm Gladwell's book. But today I've decided that I wanted to start sharing my life experiences and some of the harsher things. And it's not that I've strayed away from it before. I mean, season 1, I talked so much about some of the things that I was going through and dealt with. But this episode hits a little bit further for me because this is one of the hardest things that I've ever struggled with. And it's about the death anxiety and being in the face of my own mortality after I had my 3rd child. And I wanted to be able to share this with you because this is for the moms who thought that what you have dealt with, maybe inside of especially the American healthcare system when it came to having children, maybe you've thought that what you felt wasn't serious enough to count as trauma. Postpartum anxiety, especially death anxiety, is not something that we discuss enough. And it's something that I don't like to discuss because even though it's been 5.5 years, it still feels like fresh to me. Because there was a time where I didn't think that I would make it this far, ever so briefly of a time, but it felt like it, and I don't like to talk about it. But I also know that the more honest that I am with the experiences that I've had, the more people will be drawn to me and want to be in my space and feel good about themselves. And so that's why I'm sharing it today. And my intention here in this episode is to not fix or to diagnose, I'm certainly not a medical professional, but to validate what so many women have been made to believe is dismissible or not good enough. And if you've ever felt like joy and fear couldn't coexist after you had a baby, I just want you to know that I really see you in it. So let's just kind of dive into the backstory of it. So I got pregnant in August of 2019. And I had just gotten my first corporate job, being like, I was obsessed with being a corporate baddie. Like, I wanted to be a corporate baddie, and I had finally secured a corporate job. And so me and my husband, I took him to, I got us tickets to the Steelers game in Pittsburgh for my birthday, for my 29th birthday. And he loves the Steelers, and we were able to go. And on that drive, we were like, you know what? I just got my first job offer. Like, let's hold off on trying to have another baby. Let's wait until I get situated. And then so I went to the doctor that Wednesday after the game to get some just temporary birth control. And the doctor was like, psych, you're 5 weeks too late. And I was like, oh, okay. So we tell Audie was planned until she was unplanned. And so that kind of happened. And I was like, all right, I guess we're going to figure it out. I knew from the jump that the second the morning sickness appeared that I was having another girl. I tried to be in denial about it, but my morning sickness was so horrible with Eliza, I knew that Audie was a girl. And the ultrasounds confirmed that pretty quickly. And I had some placenta problems early on, but they fixed themselves. And so that was a relief. But then right after they fixed themselves, March of 2020 hit. And COVID hit. And everything, especially the questions about how I would give birth, kind of changed. And so then we kind of move into the piece of like, I originally went to this doctor's office because I wanted to try and have a natural birth. I had 2 C-sections. I felt like at that point, the pressure for women to give birth naturally is there. I felt like I was missing out on something, and I was like, I want to have a natural birth. So that's why I went to this particular practice. And there was one doctor there who she was trying to talk me out of it the whole time. And I was avoiding her. I was like, don't let me see her. She's ruining my plans. And then March hit, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if it's the sound thing. A lot of the fear from other people came into my open spleen in human design. And I just decided to go ahead and schedule the C-section. And, one of the sad reasons why behind I chose a C-section as well is because in America, you get 2 extra weeks of baby leave if you have a C-section as opposed to a natural birth. So I was trying to squeeze what I could out of my baby leave. And so for practicality reasons, it made more sense to have a major surgery 3rd time in a row. But there were so many fears that surrounded having a baby during COVID. It was like, right at the beginning, there were people who couldn't have anybody with them. And I was like, am I going to have to give birth to our baby alone? Like, that sounds really scary. Would my husband be even allowed in the room? Like, what was going on? And one of the hardest things that you have to do, like, especially when you have a planned C-section, is walk yourself into the OR. Walking myself into the OR is like such a surreal moment. Like, it's one thing to be wheeled into there because I've had multiple surgeries, right? It's one thing to be wheeled in there. It's another thing to physically walk in there. And then you can't walk out, obviously. And so I was able to have Aaron in the room with me, but not until the very last second. Like right before they're about to cut you open, that's when they allow your person to come in. There was so much extra protection. There was so much extra everything going on to keep everybody safe from COVID, and especially the brand new baby coming out of my tummy. And so we have Audie. Dr. Dennis picks her up and she's like, whoa, because Audie was 10 pounds, 3 ounces when she was born. And I had never actually had skin to skin or had any of my other babies put on my chest when I had my other C-sections. I wasn't allowed to hold them until afterward. They could come close to me, but actually on my chest, they put Audie on my chest. And very quickly I was like, you guys got to get her off. Like, I can't breathe. She's so heavy. And so they took her off. And, after that, you go into recovery, this, that, and the third. And I'm starting to feel like, okay, wow, it's kind of difficult to breathe. And I felt like, all right, well, I just had this big old baby. Like, she's not holding up my insides anymore. My core was super stretched. I was like, maybe it's just that feeling of that. And when you have a C-section, you're supposed to breathe through this tube thing. Can't remember the name of it, but you have to take a deep breath in and it moves the pipe up, and you're supposed to be able to get it to a certain number. And they're supposed to watch you to make sure that you can do that so you don't get pneumonia or so that they can check for signs of a pulmonary embolism. And I just couldn't do it. And I was quitting pretty quickly, and I was like, I can't do this. But I did mention to the hospital staff a couple of times, like, hey, listen, I'm having trouble. Like, feels really hard to like breathe. Like, I feel really heavy. And it wasn't necessarily brushed off, but nobody really followed up. And a little bit of anxiety kind of started to build under the surface. Like, okay, this is weird. Like, I've never experienced this before. And so then we were discharged on a Sunday, and Audie had her appointment the next day because, newborns have appointments like every other day because they always care about the baby. And so she had her checkup appointment. She was good to go. And then that's when my mom was like, all right, we've checked in on the baby. Like, now it's time for you to call the doctor and figure out why you're having, trouble taking a deep breath. Because I would get to a certain point and it would feel like I couldn't go any further. But I knew that I know my body. I'm like, I've been me my whole life. I should be able to breathe just a little bit deeper. And I couldn't. And so I called the doctor. I got the midwife on the phone, and she was like, yeah, it's a little concerning to me just because you had a C-section. She's like, so why don't you come on in? And my first question was like, okay, well, can I bring my baby and my husband? And she was like, yeah, you're just going to go back into labor and delivery. And I'm like, okay. Because don't forget, Audie is 3 days old. 3 days old. And then we get there and they're like, no, actually, your husband can't be there. Like, you guys have to, like, he has to wait in the car. And I'm like, but we were just here yesterday. Like, you guys just discharged me. And I was feeling this way before you discharged me. So if there's something wrong here, this is because you guys didn't catch it. And they were like, no, or whatever. So now I'm being separated from my baby. It's getting late. And we're doing this thing too, where I have to pump. I had to bring my pump with me, and I'm pumping. And then the nurses are having to meet Aaron in the parking garage to give him the milk for Audie. And at first they separated me. They put me in this room with this like massive, like, air purifier. They come in dressed like those people from Monsters Incorporated when they come in touch with the babies and 2319. They're all dressed like that. And they're like, we don't think that you have a pulmonary embolism. They're like, because your oxygen is normal, your blood pressure is normal, like all of those things are normal. But they had to test me for COVID. And that was back when that thing went all the way up into your brain. And I was like, ugh, oh my God, this is horrible. And then the COVID test came back negative. And so they're like, we're going to do the CT scan just to be safe. So we did the CT scan and then I fell asleep. And then I'm woken up by the very same doctor who I had been avoiding the whole time, my whole pregnancy. I'm woken up by her. And she's like, we want to thank you for coming in today. She's like, you do have a blood clot in your lungs. And again, I was like fast asleep. So I'm looking around like, am I dreaming? Like, is this real life? Like, what's going on? And I'm looking at her and I literally said to her, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Because I don't want to die. And she's like, well, you're not going to die. But then she said, but we don't know what would have happened if you had stayed at home. And I'm like, what the fuck? This woman, I hated her bedside manner. She had no business working with women who were having babies. I was like, okay, so what's the plan? And she was like, well, you're probably going to have to inject blood thinners every day, twice a day for 3 months. And I was like, what? I was like, I just had a baby. Like, no. I'm like, no, I should just be getting the baby blues real quick. I know I'm about to start getting the sweats. Like, I get really emotional out of nowhere. Like, where's my standard 4-week recovery that I'm used to? This was not in the cards for me. And I was like, get this woman away from me. She's like, well, we'll know more when you talk to the hematologist. She's like, we want to admit you for now so that, you get the first, dose in you and so that we can monitor you or whatever. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this isn't that serious. And it just went from, I just had a baby to, we're so glad you came in because you could have died if you stayed at home kind of thing. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? And so the only place that they could put me safely was on the cancer floor. And I was like, why can't you put me back in like mom baby unit? And they were like, no, because we need it for mom baby. And I'm like, and so when they admitted me, I was like, will you let my husband back in? And they were like, no. So they continued my isolation. They continued my can't have anybody near me. So they put me on the cancer floor. They wheeled this massive refrigerator into my room to keep the milk good and cold because I had to keep pumping. Because at that point, my husband was like, I can't wait out here anymore. They wanted to keep me for like a whole nother 12 hours. And I just kind of felt myself like going deeper and deeper into this depression. And the nurses on the cancer floor, like they tried. They were like, you're our healthiest patient. They're like, you're so good. Like, we know how to treat this. You're going to be just fine. And I just couldn't stop myself. Don't forget, C-sections are already difficult on the body because 1 second you're pregnant and the next second you're not. Like, there's no labor. There's nothing for your body to process. All of a sudden, everything is gone. So in my opinion, the postpartum hormones and the stress are way worse with a C-section because it happens so violently. And so I'm 3 days from having a baby and my hormones are all over the place. And now you're telling me that I need to go hang out with people who are on their deathbed? I'm surrounded by death. I have an open spleen, which means there's fear everywhere and I'm absorbing all of it. And it just felt like isolation and just this sterile silence. And it was like, for me, it was like, it wasn't just the medication that I was taking in. It was this realization that there was a possibility that I could die and no one could be there because this was COVID. There were people dying all across the world, all across the country in hospital rooms by themselves during a pandemic. And I was like, is this how it ends for me? I just had a baby. Like, what the fuck? And when I talked to the hematologist, he's like, no, you don't have to do all that. He's like, you could just take a pill every day for 3 months and then it'll be fine. He's like, and we'll do a follow-up CT scan in a month. He's like, but it's so small. It's not even that big of a deal. And my doctor was back on call and she came up and she was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't understand how this happened. She's like, this is your third C-section. This should have never have happened. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, she was full of guilt. And she was like, I don't ever want you to think, she was like, that you were on death's door. She's like, because you weren't. She was like, this probably would have cleared up by itself if you hadn't done anything, but it was better that you were here. And I was getting all of this mixed feedback and information, and it was just so confusing and it was so hard. And when they finally let me leave the hospital, like, I fucking bucked out of there. I was like, get me out of here. I don't want to be here. And I like felt physically like, I was like, when am I going to start to feel better? Because they, even when they put the, they put that thing on your chest to hear your heartbeat, like even the nurses could barely hear the change in my breath. That's how tiny this PE was. But one doctor made it seem like anything could have been possible and I could have died. And another doctor was like, this probably would have resolved on its own. And physically, I felt like okay, but I was so emotionally shattered and torn up and messed up because I had these sleepless nights, this panic, these intrusive thoughts of like, what if I die? What if I die? I have these big ass pictures in our hallway of me pregnant with all 3 kids and then their newborn photos above them and I ordered them like a week after I had them because I was like, I don't want my babies to forget me. I don't want my babies to forget who I was and what I did for them. I literally couldn't fall asleep unless I was physically touching my husband because I was so afraid to fall asleep. Because Dr. Dennis had said to me, she was like, this was not a situation where you would have fallen asleep and not woken back up. And even though she reassured me of that specific sentence made me feel unsafe to fall asleep. And so I couldn't fall asleep unless I was physically touching him. And I started to build this resentment towards Audie. I started to build this resentment towards this fat, beautiful, fluffy baby that I loved so much. But I was just like, this never would have happened if I hadn't had you. This never would have happened if I hadn't gotten pregnant again. And I felt so guilty for being mad at her because she's a baby. She didn't ask fucking be here, right? Like, it was hard. It tore me up. And I just felt like I couldn't breathe. And I ended up taking myself, the PE was gone after the next CT scan, after a month. But then that summer, I was like, I feel like I can't breathe. And so I took myself to the ER and they were like, we don't want to do another CT scan because you have one. This was before I had the second CT scan done. They're like, you have one scheduled, so we don't want to do like another one, which again is just American healthcare in action. Like, we don't want to waste resources. They're like, we did a chest x-ray and they're like, everything seems fine. And the doctor was like, I'm pretty sure this is anxiety. She's like, you are breathing in deeply, just fine. She's like, but because of your history, you're worried. And I was like, I don't know what this feels like. I don't understand what this is to have my anxiety manifest so wholeheartedly in physical form. And that was a tough blow. And so finally I talked to PCM and he was like, I think it might be a good time for you to go on antidepressants. And I was just so against it because I was like, there's something wrong with me. I'm not crazy. And I'm like, but I can't breathe. I go through every single day so afraid for my life, even though everybody says that I'm fine. The doctors say I'm fine. Like, I'm good. I don't have to be on blood thinners. Like, I'm okay. Like, and it also made me feel like it took something away from me. I wanted to be done having children after 3 kids. And I even talk so much these days about how I would change the fact that I might not have had kids if I hadn't started so young, knowing myself what I know now. But after I had Audie and I saw how perfect she was, I wanted another one. I wanted a 4th baby for some reason. And that decision was taken from me. And it felt like a choice that was mine was ripped from me, that my body had made a decision for me, and it didn't feel good at all. And, but I was like, I can't take this. I can't take this moments of being happy to see my baby and then immediately followed by, well, what if I just die tomorrow? And I was like, I know that it's not a fix, but I just can't go through the day living like this over and over and over again. Like, I can't. I just can't. And even though I didn't start my business until Adi was like a year and a half old, or almost 2 years old, when I started my business, or even any moment I had a win, it was immediately followed by this thought of, well, what if I die? It'd be like, oh, I secured a new client. And then it would immediately be followed by, yeah, well, you could probably die tomorrow though. So there's no need to, like, what good is it? And that's been so hard. That's been one of the hardest things, is having so much of my joy snatched by the intrusive thoughts, snatched by this idea that I could die at any moment, not being able to celebrate and not being on the frequency of gratitude long enough to be able to welcome more in. That has been one of the hardest things of having this death anxiety and having this postpartum anxiety that lasted as long as it did, because it like literally rewired my brain. I felt like I couldn't be grateful. I felt like I couldn't look forward. I felt like I couldn't plan, which is hard for me as a projector because I'm a future thinker. I hardly ever live here in the moment that is now. I'm always thinking about what's next. And I felt like a piece of me had been taken, that I couldn't be the planner and look so far with love and happiness towards the future, because I was like, well, what if there's none for me? And nobody's going to love my babies the way that I do. I'm their mom. And the idea of not being here for them, it overcame me. I succumbed to it. It was so hard. And it was so difficult to build my business with this idea in mind that something could go horribly wrong at any moment and I could just die. And I think one of the most difficult pieces for me was being labeled as a survivor by like my therapist and stuff. They're like, well, you survived something. And I was like, ew, no, I didn't. I didn't even want to be associated with the idea that I could be knocking on death's door. I'm like, no, they said it was small. They said that I wasn't in any kind of, fatal danger, like none of that. I didn't want to be labeled as a survivor. I was like, surviving is for cancer people. I'm like, my mother-in-law had cancer twice. She's a survivor. I am not. Like, I didn't want that. And it was like, I knew it was trauma, right? Because trauma always is anything that comes along and disrupts your peace. And I knew that it was trauma, but I didn't want to dramatize it either. I didn't want to feel dramatic about it. And it's like holding the duality of like, I didn't almost die, but I did also have a traumatic birth experience, and I'm allowed to feel that. And allowing myself to redefine what trauma meant. Because I went through the same thing when I was raped. I tried to downplay it like, well, it wasn't by some stranger in a back alley who left me for dead, so it couldn't be that serious. And I downplayed it for years, which is why it took me so long to come to terms with what actually happened. We gaslight ourselves to protect ourselves, but then what we do is we end up burying the trauma so deeply that we don't ever actually deal with it. And I knew I was in therapy for so long, I had to marry the therapy with the antidepressant, because the antidepressant was just a Band-Aid. And even then, it didn't help with all of the anxiety. It got me through. And coming off the antidepressant, and I call it raw dogging my emotions, that was one of the most important things that I've ever done. And staring it in the face and allowing it to heal. And it's taken a long time. It's taken a long time. And the healing part of this, just 5 years later, is like the relief of finally kind of being able to talk about it without always fearing death. Am I someone who's ready to die? Absolutely the fuck not. I, from a very, very young age, always believed that I was going to live a long life. I don't know how to explain it. It came from this space of, I watched one of these documentaries about one of the girls that was killed during Columbine. And her father would talk about how his daughter always knew that she was going to die young. She wrote about it in her journal. She could feel it coming. She always knew that she was going to die young. And in my mind, in my head, I was like, that's weird, because I've kind of always felt like I was going to live a really long time. And experiencing this and going through this felt like that was taken from me. Felt like that certainty of knowing that I was going to live until I was like 95 years old felt like that was snatched from me. And it hurt, because it made me question what I knew. And so it was so difficult to just be able to enjoy a moment without having intrusive thoughts and angry thoughts and death thoughts come in and take over. And I can finally be able to do that now. I can finally be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to plan for all of 2026 because it's going to feel so good. But there is still in the piece of back of my mind, like, oh, well, don't go too far because you don't really know what's going to happen. But it's not this overwhelming feeling of death. It's not this overwhelming feeling of like, well, you can't celebrate because you could die at any second and everything that you've done until this point doesn't mean anything. And I even think about my numerology and how it says that I'm here to counsel millions. And there are even still some times where I'm like, but I already have. Like, my videos and my content reach has already reached millions of people. And in my head, I'm like, what if this is it? What if this is as far as I go? And I don't allow it to consume me. I acknowledge the feeling in that moment like a cloud passing in the wind. And then I move on. And over time, it becomes less hard. Over time, it becomes less prominent. Over time, it doesn't feel as heavy as it once did. I don't allow it to throw me completely off track. I don't spiral about it. I don't have a panic attack over it. I acknowledge it for what it is, and I remind myself that my body is still healing. And that probably by the time Audie's like 8 or 9 years old, I won't feel this way at all. And I can finally allow myself to have celebration without punishing myself or downplaying my accomplishments or believing that they won't ever be good enough because for some reason am I going to die? And recognizing that trauma isn't a contest, right? It's an experience that deserves to be honored. Just because I didn't go into a coma and I wasn't on life support and I didn't have a stroke or some of these horrible birth stories that you hear, that my trauma is still valid and what I went through is still valid. And what I've had to dig up and put myself through in order to put myself back together, that is valid. And that my feelings and my emotions behind it and everything that I went through, it's okay for me to feel the way that it is. And the importance of giving language to what happened to me so that I can reclaim my power and not have these negative emotions completely take over. And so I want you to know that if you're a mom that's still in it, because I don't think that they talk enough about how long postpartum can actually be. When they said that you could deal with postpartum stuff for up to 5 years, I was like, that's a long time. But I'm still kind of dealing with it. I'm dealing with it gracefully to people on the outside, but it was fucking rough. It was so hard. And I felt like it took so much from me. And I'm not even at that point now where I can even say, what has it given me? Because I don't have any gratitude for any of these moments yet. I don't understand what the point was. I don't. I'm like, I understand that my life is I'm here to allow people to live through me and to see what's possible for them through me. But I'm like, could we be a little bit less dramatic about the life experiences, please? Because I don't understand what the point of it was. You know that Cardi B clip where she's like, what was the reason? What was the reason? That's me. What was the point of that? Because that could have been a text message, right? But I didn't imagine anything. And whatever it is that you're going through, you're not imagining it. You're not overreacting. You're experiencing, and you have experienced something profound. And you need to allow yourself to give yourself truth to that. Your pain is valid, even if it doesn't meet someone else's definition of tragedy or trauma. You are still allowed to feel the way that you feel. And you're allowed to hold joy and fear at the same time. They can coexist. I loved every second I had with Audie, and I was simultaneously so upset about what had happened. And the fact that my maternity leave that I had so meticulously planned was ruined by death anxiety and intrusive thoughts and feeling like I was going to die at any moment. It was bitter, so bitter. And the complexity of those emotions existing together, they might not have made sense, but they were there and they were necessary. And I don't want you to feel in any way that you failed as a mom because you felt fear or you felt negative feelings towards your baby because what had happened, or you weren't always chipper and people weren't always listening to you. Like, none of this was a failure on your part. All of this changed how I parented my children. I think it firmly also helped me see my children for who they were and not just trying to be a parent for parent's sake. Again, though, that could have been a text. It didn't have to be a traumatic moment. The fuck? Okay? But if you're a mom who's lived through something like this, you survived something that the system never prepared you for, especially as a woman of color. They rarely believe us. And I was lucky that they believed me, and that the midwife that I spoke to on the phone that day, that she was a woman of color. But at the same time, the woman who I had avoided the entire pregnancy, she was also a woman of color. And then there was a piece of it after. I had to go back into the hospital 2 weeks after that because I had a lot of bleeding. And that was also too because I was on this blood thinner. And that was one of the signs to look out for, was extensive bleeding. And at that point, they let me have Audie and Aaron in the room with me. And I handled it a lot better. And I told them, I said, you guys handled this a lot better this time. And they're like, we know the doctor that you had last time. And they're like, and she felt really bad for how the whole situation happened. And as a practice, we felt like we failed you that day. And there was a lot of ownership behind the way that my entire medical debacle was handled. And I told them I maintain to this day that if they had found that pulmonary embolism before they discharged me from the hospital the first time with Audie, that I don't think that I would have gone through the same thing. I think if they would have been like, hey, by the way, you have a blood clot in your lungs, and before we discharge you, we're going to keep you an extra day and just run blood thinners through you, and then you just have to take this pill for the next 3 months, I don't think that I would have spiraled the way that I did. But it was the isolation, and it was that failure in overall American healthcare system that did that to me. And it happened the way that it was supposed to happen. I still don't understand the fucking reason, but it happened the way it was supposed to happen. And I wanted to share this with you today because I just always want you to know that you're so much more powerful than you believe, and that everything it is that you're going through is always end up temporary, even if it feels like it's taking forever. And I'm never going to gaslight you and tell you that it happened for a reason or whatever it was, and Jesus this. I'm not going to religion you and gaslight you. I'm not going to do any of those things. But I do want you to know that you're not alone. And that you need to take the amount of time that it takes you to heal, even though it felt like everything just kind of got turned upside down all at once. And you're not by yourself. And that the life that you desire for yourself, I never knew that sitting in that hospital room by myself on the cancer floor in May of 2020, that 5 years later in November of 2025, I would be sitting in my $800,000 house with my pool outside, having these like dream clients. I just found out yesterday that my coaching was mentioned to like an A-list celebrity. Like it's night and day. And sometimes time is all that it takes. Time is all that you need. And give yourself grace for what you've been through, and allow yourself to create the peace of mind that you need when you're ready to have it. And do whatever you need to do, but feel your emotions. Allow yourself to know that what you're feeling is valid, and know that you're not alone. And if you want to live your best life instead of just watching me live mine and overcome everything that I've overcome and make the money that I make now and blaze through some of these things that I've blazed through, you don't have to just watch me. You can be a part of it. Because I know that you're in this episode feeling like your proximity to me will help you touch the sky. And I have a program for that, and it's called the Sanctum Field. And it's one way, and I just tap in once a week, twice a week, and I just give you little bits of motivation. I go deeper with you than I do in these podcast episodes to let you know that you can have whatever it is that you want, and whatever it is that you're feeling or facing or dealing with now is only temporary, and that the life that you truly desire for yourself is only 1 or 2 decisions away. And so you can find that link at any of the links in my bio, show notes, all those things. And I will catch you guys when I'm ready to share more. Until next time. Hey, if you enjoyed the show, make sure to leave a review or a rating for us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you're interested in joining any of my programs, you can find more information at thefccoach.com. And you can follow me on Threads and Instagram at LexiPCoaching. See you over there.